All right, we're going to talk about tempo today in this video. So when you're taking a look at our program, you'll notice that there's numbers after the sets and reps. You'll see a tempo. It'll have a number, period, a number, a period, and a number. So it's 4 different numbers, and those indicate how fast you should be going throughout the range of motion. Okay. So the first number is always the eccentric contraction. So I think of eccentric as anytime your muscle is elongated. So take a look at the bicep. Right now it's short. Anytime it's elongated, that is a concentric motion. So think of eccentric to remember it as elongate. And think especially kind of that part where it says long. In general, the eccentric contraction is going to take a longer period of time to perform. The next contraction is a concentric contraction. Okay, so concentric with the bicep, it's when you're shortening your muscle. So this is the concentric movement. So think of it in terms of short. Okay, so shortening, it should take a shorter period of time to do that. Now there are contractions in between these. So after the eccentric, basically the peak eccentric is when I am stretching a muscle. Okay, so we'll just call that the stretch contraction. And then there is the peak contraction. Okay, so the stretch comes after the eccentric, and the peak comes after, if I can spell, the concentric. So what you're going to take a look at when you're reading tempo is you'll see something like this. 3, 1, 1, 1. Okay, it could be any combination of any types of numbers. Okay, so the first number is always the eccentric contraction. The second number is always the stretch. Okay, so when the muscle is elongated as possible. The third number is the concentric contraction, and the fourth number is always the peak contraction. So this is very easy to remember for a lot of people when it comes to squatting or bench pressing, because when I squat, I'm starting, my first initial movement is the eccentric, right? Because when I'm standing, I'm completely contracted. It gets a little bit hairy and a little bit complicated when I start in terms of a biceps curl, right? Because I'm starting already elongated. So my first initial movement is going to be the concentric. So you don't always start whatever movement you're doing with the eccentric. Sometimes you start it with the concentric. So you have to pay attention and see how well, or basically see how you do with those types of things. So you can think of it in terms as a cycle, okay? So think of it as stretch. So when you're in a stretch, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to contract, okay? Once you contract, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to have a peak contraction. Once you're at the peak contraction, then you're going to go into the eccentric. So think of it in terms of this. So eccentric goes to stretch, stretch goes to concentric, concentric goes to peak, and it goes around in a little circle just like that. Okay, so no matter where you're starting, whether it's on a squat where you start at the peak, what's the next move? The eccentric, so that's the first number. If you start with a pull-up, you're hanging in the stretch position, so the first number you're going to do is the concentric contraction. So the amount of time that you spend in each one of these is denoted in the tempo. All right, thanks for listening.